Returning to his native homeland, speaking about his other native homeland, please welcome Dave Hill.
Thank you. Oh, he's here.
Hooray.
We can start. He's here.
You can start. Sorry, I'm late.
No.
Hi, Ruby.
Thank you for coming to the literary event of the century. No, a few announcements first. There's, I think, 3 more Molson beers. First, they've gone. They're going. I insisted that there be Canadian beer, even if it's just a 6-pack. But there's 3 left. Also, whoever threw a hand towel in the toilet downstairs, been asked to tell you to not do that. I think you know who you are. Blake. No, no, it's not my nephew. I mean, I have my suspicions. Anyway, thank you. I'm going to talk for 45 minutes, and then I'm going to read for about an hour and a half, and then we'll do an hour of questions, take a quick break, and then we'll start it up over again. And we'll get out of here at about 2:30. So this is my new book. It's my 3rd book, and I took the cover off so I would know that this was my copy, because the last reading I did, they sold my copy. Which is, I mean, profit's profit, whatever. But this, I wanted to remember to keep this one. So the book is about, I'm from University Heights. Thank you. But my grandfather was from Clinton, Ontario. So growing up, people, when you're growing up, you're kind of taught how great America is, and my grandfather would always be like, no, actually Canada's the best. And then a few years ago, I was approached by Penguin, the book company people, and they asked me if I could write a book with a Canadian angle. And I was like, yeah, totally, my grandfather was from there. And they gave me $400, and here's what I came up with. I spent like 2 years traveling through Canada. I think about a dozen different trips. I'd hoped to just drive through Canada aimlessly, but I have a dog and I had a walker, so I kept having to go home to take her out. So the book is a bunch of separate trips. Sometimes I combine provinces and towns. A lot of people say it's the greatest book about Canada ever written by a non-Canadian, and I don't think most people could name another one, so I'm happy to accept that compliment. I'm going to read a short passage. And this is, I have to warn you, I think the most controversial passage in the entire book. If you are easily aroused, or no, it's very racy. No, it's not. But I think I wanted to read the most upsetting section of the book, so you would know it does not get any worse than this. If you're reading it around the tree on Christmas, it makes a great gift for Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, birthdays, anniversaries, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, funerals, wakes, pretty much anything where you could use a gift. I think this is the book. It pairs very well with my other book that's for sale here. Dave Hill Doesn't Live Here Anymore. But I'm not really hawking that now, so you can only buy that if you buy this first. I do have a 3rd book, my first book, which I don't think is here. But you can't buy that until you buy these other books first. I mean, you can read them in any order, though. Okay, so this passage, how are we doing on time? Right? Did I thank you guys for coming? Thank you for coming, by the way. The book reads, I feel like, a lot more smoothly than I speak or look visually. So don't worry about it. Is the book going to be more of this? Because no thanks. I think you'd be surprised by the prose in this book. Stunning. Sometimes I go back and read it and I'm like, you hit it out of the park, Dave. No, it has its moments. But so I went. One of the trips was to. I actually went to the province of Quebec twice, but I went to Quebec City on one of the trips, and I went in January, which I don't recommend doing. I don't even recommend that the people of Quebec City stay in Quebec City in January because it's really cold, and I thought they would have to cut off a lot of my body parts after. I brought a scarf, but it was like really flattering scarf, but it wasn't like a warm scarf. And I think that, you'll see the pictures. You'll be like, well, he looks great, but I was very cold. I went dog sledding with my friend Carl, and I'm going to read a little bit about that now. And it just sort of jumps right in. We're already on the sled at this point, so I just don't want you to be confused. There were 5 dogs attached to our sled, not exactly an Iditarod ready number as best I could tell, but still enough to get us moving at a pretty good clip. In grade school, I'd read a book whose title I can't remember, in which children had loaded their sleds with bars of gold and ridden them through the forest past Nazis who were none the wiser. So it was fun to pretend that that's what Carl and I were up to as we sped through the woods, our dogs barking and yipping all the way in front of us, as I stood at the back of the sled and Carl sat bundled up in front of me like a goddamn schoolgirl. I should also note that this is not, of my 3 books, this has the least profanity. And I've done this with each book. My last part is I scan it for profanity and see if I can get that number down just for my dad. And so, not that he reads these. This is actually, and I will get back to my incredible book. I know it's really bad to jump out of a passage. Well, I'll take it from the top. But I've written 3 books, as I've mentioned 3 or 4 times now, and I've dedicated every one of them to my dad. And he called me a few weeks ago and he said, hey, thanks for dedicating your book to me. That's the first time anyone's ever dedicated a book to me. And I said, actually, it's the 3rd time. Goodbye, it's your son David. Anyway, okay, so Carl and I on the sled. This didn't last long, though, because after just a few minutes on the trail, Katerine, that's our sled lady, Katerine signaled for us to bring things to a halt as there was another sled stopped on the trail ahead of us. It was hard to see exactly what was going on. The dogs attached to the sled in front of Katerine's appeared to be entangled somehow as the instructor in charge crawled along the ground, trying in vain to separate them. They are, how you say, making babies, Katerine explained after a few moments. I'd like to think she winked at me as she said this, but she was honestly too far ahead of us for me to tell one way or another. God, I love that girl. She was this beautiful French-Canadian woman. Anyway, I thought it was bad a little earlier when one of Katerine's dogs stopped in its tracks to take a crap right in the middle of the trail. But dogs screwing on the job, this was some next-level shit. Then again, the more I thought about it, I could totally see it. You're a handsome young male Siberian Husky. She's an attractive young Alaskan Malamute. Sure, you've seen each other around the yard a few times, but the timing just never felt right. Then suddenly, you find yourselves out in the middle of the woods, running as fast as you can, while a sled loaded with tourists trying to take selfies drags behind you, threatening to run you right over should you decide to stop, since the tourists in question aren't exactly great with the brakes. Emotions run high, and suddenly, there's only one thing left to do. Stop in your tracks, wayward tourist sled threat be damned, and just start pumping away like there's no tomorrow, while a father tries to explain to his small child exactly what the fluffy black and white dog is doing to the fluffy brown and white dog. We've all been there. It's a story as old as time itself. As is often the case when dogs get romantic, whether it's in the dead of winter or not, the two dogs became stuck together from all that red-hot love-making. And this, I'm going to go to a footnote now. Deeply disturbing one. As you can probably imagine, I couldn't resist doing a bit of research on the subject, and as it turns out, once inside the female dog's vagina, the male dog's penis swells up so large that the male is unable to remove it, sometimes for as long as 30 minutes, during which time the male continuously ejaculates into the female. Seems like showing off, if you ask me, but there you have it. And it goes back up. It's just science, people. And after a few tries, the instructor, who had been trying to separate them, eventually gave up and instead just removed them from the sled they'd been pulling and tied them to a nearby tree, presumably to have a good long think about what they had done before being picked up later, as the father looked on in horror and his small child began sobbing uncontrollably, as one sometimes does when suddenly confronted with the complexities of life. Then, whatever dogs had managed to resist the urge to just start porking in the middle of the woods, right in front of everybody, pulled the rest of us down the trail, whatever was left of our innocence, gone forever. As we pulled away, it was hard not to feel sorry for the two canine lovers. Sex can be plenty awkward as it is, but imagine finishing up and then being dragged off into a snowdrift and chained to a pine tree together in the dead of winter. That's just weird. And not to get too judgmental toward the dogs in question, more than just a little bit unprofessional, I might add, especially in these increasingly insensitive times. Then again, it's hard not to admire their joie de vivre. In fact, the more I think about it, we could all learn a lot from those two dogs who, for all I know, are still out there, pumping away like a couple of champs. It goes on from there. That actually, there's no more talk of canine sex in the book after that. So if that's what you're after, sorry. Hit up Steinbeck, I guess. Anyway, and so there's more Quebec City in there. There is no, I don't think really any, there's talk about animal anatomy in the Moose Jaw chapter. But yeah, the Ontario, the only places I didn't get in the book were Nunavut, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and this, the big missing one, is Prince Edward Island, though I did go to all the rest of the East Coast, and New Brunswick, so there's 5, but I wanted to go to all those places, but my publisher, he said it was already looking pretty thick, so he said it would make a good enough doorstop as it is, if the reading part doesn't work out for you. But anyway, but you can read the rest again and again to your children and your children's children and future generations. Does anyone have any questions? They don't even have to have anything to do with the book either. It could be about hair care, anything really. Any subject. And if you want to take pictures, I request that you please use a flash, because I prefer flash photography because it's more glamorous. But does anyone have any questions? You don't have to have questions.
Did you see moose while you were there?
I didn't see a moose, which was, I mean, of all my failures,
Yeah.
that one you'd think, get that out of the way first. But I did, though, I'll tell you, I went to my grandfather's town of Clinton, Ontario, which is sort of across from Detroit, like the thumb of Michigan, that's sort of over or across Lake Huron. And it was during the Canadian 150th anniversary. And Clinton, Ontario is just this one intersection town with some shops and stuff, and among them were this thrift store and was this thrift store, and there was this cast iron moose in the window with other Canadians. It was basically like the moose and then some hockey sticks and hockey jerseys, and it was just like their Canada sesquicentennial display, and there was a sign that said items in the window aren't for sale until July 11th, and it was July 7th when I was there. So I just figured I would walk in and say, hey, I'm just visiting, hand over the moose. And so I did, and it was just this, you know, it was like going into Salvation Army or something. There was these ladies working there, and I said, well, I was nice, I said, you know, I'd like to buy the moose, and they said, oh, you can't, it's not for sale till the 11th, and I said, well, I know, but I was home visiting my dad in Cleveland. We drove up, I was with my friend Joe, and we came up to see my grandfather's farm, and so I'm leaving today, and thought maybe I could buy the moose, and they said, no, so you can't buy the moose, and I was like, well, how can I get the moose? And they said, you'd have to have someone come get it for you on the 11th, and I was like, well, the closest person I know lives in Toronto, and they said, well, can't your grandfather come pick it up for you? And I kind of looked to the ceiling, I was like, I don't know, Grandpa, can you? Because I was hoping to like wear her down. He's been gone 30 years or so. So, which I guess it was flattering that she thought my grandfather was still alive, because I must look great. But they were like, oh, no. So they went, they're like, someone has to pick it up. And then finally I was like, oh, can I, you know, just, and she's like, all right, just call me next week. Maybe we can figure something out. So I called, and then in the meantime, I was walking around the store hoping that they would be like, he's not leaving. Maybe we should just sell him the moose so he'll leave. And in that time, my friend Joe Tate, who's a great artist, he offered to sculpt me a moose. Yeah, what a friend, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I can make you a moose just like that. And I said, well, will it be made out of cast iron? And he said, no, but it'll look like cast iron. And I said, keep your damn moose, Joe. And so I called. No, I said, yeah, I want that moose. And then so I called, and then the lady said, well, email me your address, and I'll send it to you. And then so I emailed her, and she wrote back and said, all right, the moose it was like $40 including shipping, which is like a not bad price for a moose. It's about like a cat-sized moose.
Oh.
Great. Wherever you need a moose in your home, it looks great. And so I sent her my address, and she wrote back, and she's like, all right, the moose is on its way. Just send me a check when you can. And I was like, that would never, I don't think that would ever happen in America, right?
No.
That you would just send a stranger a moose.
No.
Especially with my look. I don't look like a trustworthy moose buyer. But so it was the fastest check I ever wrote, because I was like, America's reputation is on the line. But what I didn't tell my friend Joe that I had bought the moose, so he made me the moose too. So now I have two cat-sized moose geese in my home. So it all worked out great. What was the question? No, no, I didn't. I looked for a moose, but I didn't. My friend Niels, who appears in the book in 3 chapters, he lives in Merrickville, Ontario. He said he's encountered a moose in a rut, and I said, and I thought rut meant like he was stuck in like a pattern in life that he couldn't get out of, but that's not what he meant at all. It's like an amorous moose, not unlike the dogs I read about. But the moose, they're big, uncompromising. Basically, if a moose is interested in you, it's on. If you don't get away, that moose is going to do what it wants to do. To hear Niels tell it, anyway. So, but yeah, he's in and that story is in the best. There is moose talk, and if moose talk is what you're after, you'll be set. Just no actual sightings. So, and there's a question over there. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So what was the the biggest difference between New York City and Canada for you?
Oh gosh. Well, I think, but I mean, there are some cities like Toronto are similar to New York. Really just Toronto, maybe Montreal a tiny bit, but I think that there seems to be like, there's maybe people are a bit more polite in general in Canada, but you know, and they say sorry a lot, but it's not, it's sort of like a human car horn. Like it can mean sorry, or like, it can also mean like that you did something. Like they'll be like, you'll bump into someone and they'll be like, sorry. Like, but they're really like, what the fuck? So it can mean a lot of different, it can mean anything, you know. And so, which you learn pretty quickly, that sometimes they say sorry up there when they are mad at you, which is an interesting twist. That would be at least socially a thing. But I think like the psychology of the country is really different, because in America we had the revolution, you know, where we're like, no, England, we don't want anything to do with you, and the Canadians were like, yeah, we'll still be part of you, but we'll just be over here, don't mind. So I think there's like a deeply rooted difference between Americans and Canadians, like, and I didn't really come up with that theory though. Like I'd heard it before, but it kind of makes sense. I think Americans have more like a don't mess with me vibe than Canadians do. There's plenty of jerks in Canada though too. Don't get me wrong, equal amount. Any other questions? Oh, there's a question in the back.
So it's a book about Canada,
Mm-hmm.
but was there any one moment where you were able to sort of stop and look around and had the feeling like, wow, this is so Canadian?
Well, the thing with the moose, I think, was pretty. That was a pretty early on Canadian event, and I like that. There's, I mean, some of it. I think people, like, you can cross the street and cars will stop for you. Which, living in New York, I was like, oh wow, that's so weird. But I think one thing I really like is that if you reference do you know what I mean when I say the original six? Does anyone know? Some people know, right? The original six NHL teams: Boston, Toronto, Chicago, Montreal, Detroit, whatever, New York.
New York, yeah.
Is that all six? And if you just say that, and anyone in Canada will know exactly what you're talking about, whereas in America most people have no idea. But I like that you can walk up to an attractive lady in Canada and just mention the original six, and she'll be like, yep, got it. Not that I did that, but one thing that happened though, speaking of I was at the Hockey Hall of Fame a few weeks ago in Toronto, and I bought let me see what, oh, I'm not wearing them. They sell these socks with different hockey players, and I bought socks with Guy Lafleur from the Montreal Canadiens on them. He's one of my favorite hockey players, like legend from 70s and 80s. And so I posted a picture of my new socks on Instagram with the hashtag Guy Lafleur, because at the time I thought, he's not on Instagram, right? He's got better things to do. But I guess his son, so someone named Marty Lafleur responded and said, amazing. And I looked at his account, and there's all these pictures of hockey legend Guy Lafleur with this guy and his daughter. And so I was like, is Guy Lafleur your dad? And he said, yeah. And so I said, I wrote this book, and I mentioned him a weirdly large amount of times. So I sent him and his dad, Guy and his son, copies of this book. We'll see more as the story develops. Any other questions?
Which moose was better?
That's a really good question.
I mean, Joe's not here, right?
Joe's not here. He should be here. I know exactly where he is.
That mustache is unmistakable.
Yeah. You know Joe?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Museum.
Oh, yeah. So Joe also, but he's not here, so screw that guy. His dad is Joe Tate, the Cavs and Barons announcer. And so when I had just met him when he ended up coming to Clinton, Ontario with me, but I figured like, he didn't seem like a murderer, but I was like, he's not gonna murder me. He's Joe Tate, the sports announcer's dad. Like he can't just go killing strangers. So the law will catch up with him faster than the average citizen. So anyway, but we hit it off. It's where our friendship started, really. Joe is an amazing and really fast, even though the moose that he made took a long time, but when you see it, you're like, well worth the wait. The moose that I got, the Canadian ladies that sent me the moose just wrapped it in like cellophane, like that you would have, like you get your dry cleaning back in, and just put it in a cardboard box and didn't pack it in anything else. So when I got the moose, it was like one leg was sticking out and the antlers had fallen off, and like I forget what they're called, the tines or whatever, the ends of the antlers, some of those had broken, but the moose had been greatly compromised, is my point. And I thought, like, are they like trying to send me a message? You know, like, are they like, here's your moose, you bastard? And it was really messed up. My girlfriend though brought the moose back to, you know, I can't touch it, it'll fall apart, but they're both great is my answer. They're both, but Joe's, I have pictures of both, if anyone wants to see, I have pictures of both mooses, or moose. He painted a Canadian flag on his, so it's arguably more Canadian. Any other questions that I can give a weirdly long answer to? Oh, he's just taking a sip of his coffee. I thought it was there's more. There's a couple more questions.
What is your impression, the difference of their culture and our culture?
Of
Just generally, like, you know, are they happy, settled?
well, the one thing is Canada is much smaller. I mean, it's a bigger landmass, but there's 1/10 of the people. So, and I think 2/3, like most people in Canada live in like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, and then when you get out, or like those surrounding areas, and then you get out further, and there's really, I mean, I did want to drive originally, but it would have taken like 2 days between each city, really. I don't know. There's things I will say, you know, as much as people that don't like the idea of healthcare say that I've never met a Canadian, when you say what's the best thing about Canada, it's always their first answer is their healthcare. So there's that. But I think just in general, I think the people maybe it's just they're just more polite, and they don't move around as, like, I've been to more of Canada than any Canadian person I've met at this point. Like, most people will be like, oh, I've never been to Calgary, I've never been to, I think they don't travel around I think because it's honestly so cold. Like, I've been criticized for talking about how cold it is by Canadian people, but it's balmy here compared to there. It's truly unbelievable.
Even in the summer?
No, summers are nice there,
Okay.
I would say. I mean, it's great. Like, there's some, you know, say the only city that I went to that I was maybe, Winnipeg wasn't my favorite place. In that, like, I wouldn't be like, oh, you gotta go to Winnipeg. I would say, be like, oh, someday. No, it's a beautiful city. I don't know that I would want to know, honestly, because it's so cold. It's so cold. I can't eat.
They're hardy folk.
They're hardy folks. I mean, they have a lot of good food. They have poutine, which we don't have here very often, and it sounds gross.
It's making its way.
Slow, yeah, but like it's a controversial dish because there's cheese curd in it, which sounds gross, but it's delicious. But then everyone says like outside of Quebec you can't get it. But I ate it everywhere, and between you and me, I couldn't tell the difference. But that's like sacrilege thing to say. But their beer, I think, is better than here generally. But yeah, those are the big things: the poutine and the beer. Hockey's on TV, and that's the only sport I really like. So I like that about it. You can walk in pretty much anywhere, and the hockey game will be on. Like I live in New York, and you have to beg them to even put on the Rangers, who are playing up the street. So, what you have a question?
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask, so when you write, do you like to take some of the things in your books and use them on stage as bits, or work, like...
Oh, yeah, no.
Sorry,
Oh.
stand up, sorry. Do you like to tell some stories that are in your 3 books, as you stated before,
My
on stage?
Oh, the 3 books that I wrote? Oh, I thought you meant take things like the socks I bought. I heard it wrong. You didn't mean physical objects. You meant like, yeah, there's some things, not really anything in this book so far have I talked about on stage, but the other books, either there were some things that were like in a book that I later talked about on stage, or things that I talked about on stage that later were put in the book. But I find that I have to totally rework them to be to work and like something that works on stage. Or if you just write it out the way you said on stage, it would read very weird, and vice versa.
So do you have like a voice you write in, like you have to change your thought process a little bit when you're writing for a book versus writing a joke?
The question was, is there a difference between writing a book and writing a joke? I think, yeah, there's a difference, because with a book you're just sitting there and it's just me and my dog pretty much. I know it's like a cliche, but it's really what I did. And so you just write it, and there's no feedback really at all, and so you can kind of tinker with it in a different way. And then maybe with writing you tend to maybe just write. I wait to hear back. Like my first 2 books, because I have 3, as I mentioned, I have 3 books so far. But the first 2 I was really nervous and would have friends read it and editors read it, and then this one I didn't do that because I was just like, I realize it's annoying to do that to people, to be like, will you please read every draft of this book. So I just decided, a friend of mine was like, just trust the process of like the editor has his job for a reason or whatever. So I think, but it's weird, like then you read it out loud and you realize like, oh, that's maybe fine to read, but when you read it out loud it sounds a bit different, and maybe you wouldn't include it in that context. Or sometimes with performing live, there might be something that you really like, that, like I just did this thing on Live from Here with Chris Thiele on public radio, and it was like for Christmas, so I was working on it like over. I was on tour in Scotland like a month ago, and I just started working on it every night, like making myself do it, no matter how much or little people reacted, no matter how drunk they were by the time it went on or whatever, and I just made myself do it. And there'd be like some things that I really liked, and I would change it over and over, and then you end up having to cut something that you're like, I think that personally, for my sense of humor, this one sentence is the funniest sentence, but you're like, I've now said it in front of 1,000 people, at least, and no one has ever liked it. And you have to go like, oh well, I won't say that. So books you can just stick to your guns a little more, because you'll never know whether someone liked it or not. But with performing live, you find out right away whether something works. You know, if you do it over and over, and you know, 'cause, sometimes. Do you want to hear the joke that no one likes? No, it's just this stupid thing, and it won't even make any sense, because in the context of this long, rambling 10-minute thing. But I was so bummed, I was like, no one likes it.
Is it
So
the 12 days one?
yeah. Because that thing had so many different versions. Every version was different until like literally the day before. So. And then finally I had to be like, okay, I need to stick with the plan. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that helps, thank you.
I have a question. When did you realize you had a funny bone and wanted to nurture that into writing or stand-up or whatever? And did you have a mentor? How did that process evolve for you?
I mean, it could be argued that I don't have a funny bone now. I mean, depending on who you ask. But some of the people here tonight would probably say that I don't. But I don't know. I think just goofing around as a kid, you know, at family dinners and things like that, you joke around. And but then when I started playing in bands, and well, two things. I started writing for the Plain Dealer. My sister was a reporter for the Plain Dealer for a long time, and I was sort of a troubled youth and black sheep. I was in a lot of street gangs, a lot of gangs on the east side of the suburbs. You wouldn't want to run into me at Cedar Center in the 90s. No, I started writing for the Plain Dealer, and I would write these articles on whatever, like I'd go to a club and write about it. And I realized that I didn't really care about the article except for the couple of jokes that I was able to sneak in. That was like what I realized I liked doing that. And then I was playing in bands, and I started reluctantly singing in bands, and then I found that I liked talking in between songs as much as I liked playing the songs. And I would start talking more. My bandmates would be like, "Come on, play the song." I'm like, "No, shut up." And like we would break an amp or a string. I'd be like, "Cool." So I really liked that. And then, but even so, I never planned to, you know, become a comedian. I figured I would just write, and then I was writing on a TV show, and I would just act like such an idiot at the office. They would be like, "Why don't you just be on the show?" And I actually auditioned to be on the show with the network people, and this is sort of like emblematic of my entire career, I think. They said, "He's too strange and volatile." So they didn't put me on the show. I eventually got on other shows, and I'm allowed to be on shows here and there now, but honestly, like, it was the first, I think going into comedy and writing and things were the first job really that where people were like, "Well, why are you?" I was on, I'm a horrible, like my girlfriend works in an office and she tells me what goes on there, and I wouldn't last till lunch one day. Like I think comedy was just the first, it was just sort of the path of least resistance, and I stopped borrowing money from my parents, and they were like, "Good, stick with it." And my siblings, and anyway, so I don't know, but I think the jury's still out whether I'm actually funny. If you go on YouTube, it's split right down the middle. The comments. No, but I don't know. It seems to be going well, and I'm able to tour the world, and I feel really lucky, and I feel like I'm getting old enough that I just have to ride this out. And it's too late for me. Like I used to worry, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go do something, but I figure I'll be dead before that happens. With any luck, God willing.
What, he asked who your mentor.
Mentor. Oh, you did?
I did. It was a 3-part.
Oh, yeah, you did. Do you mean like people that I look up to, or people who mentored me like personally?
Maybe somebody who coaxed you along, or gave you advice along the way, or somebody you looked up to?
I've been lucky in that. I think one of the things I love about doing what I do is eventually, I've been able to run into people that I've admired a long time, and I would say, some of my favorite people like Chris Elliott and Dick Cavett are people that I've become friendly with over the years, and Dick Cavett's like a very close friend now, and just the fact that he doesn't think I suck is like really the highest praise. Like I've already done plenty of name dropping in the last few sentences, but Dick Cavett, I'm assuming most of you are familiar with, the young folks might not be, but I think he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest talk show host ever, him and Letterman, and he had one in his last book. He did an interview with the New York Times, and they asked him like who he thought was funny, and he said me, and he said he's hilarious. That's not an opinion. It's just a fact, and which is like I couldn't ask for anyone on earth. Clearly, it's not my dad who's going to say it, but anyone like professionally to say that would, So a friend of mine had another artist friend, draw a picture of Dick Cavett, and it says, "Not an opinion, just a fact," and I have it hanging like right by my door when I leave my house every day, because I'm like, I can go outside. If he thinks that about me, I'll go outside. And then, so he would be, the biggest one I can think of. And then, I don't know, Janine Garofalo is, one of my favorites ever, and she's also, a really good friend, and she's taken me on tour and stuff, and to be able to talk to her and then, and to watch her. She's the only comedian I watch every time, because every show is different, so it's always super inspiring. And then Eddie Izzard, he's another one. I did a show in London a few months ago, and he came to that, and it was like super inspiring, in that he was like, just go. He's like, just go wherever. He's like, there's people that want. I think he's just like, you and I are a lot alike. Just go, keep going all over the world. Like, there's people that want this. I think he was like basically recognized that not everyone wants this, but he was just like, just go all over the world. Like, there's people that want it, and so that's inspired me a lot to, keep. I've just been adding like new countries to, like I did a show in Krakow over the summer, in Budapest. And I'll do another show in Krakow in a few months, and just pushing further east and I feel like the more that Hollywood rejects me, the further into Eastern Europe I'm gonna go.
Does anything ever get lost in translation in those countries?
Sometimes there was this one story I told. I don't really tell now, but I was telling it, for a while. And a big part of the story involves me buying a gyro or gyro, but I call them gyros because I'm from University Heights. And so a big part of the story is I talk about buying a gyro. And the bigger part of the story is a homeless man threw a bottle of urine on me. That's the sort of the lead. But the part of it is I bought a gyro, and I was really excited, because this sort of story or bit or whatever was doing very well in America, and I was doing shows in London, and I was like, here we go, and they were just looking at me the whole time, and I was just like, what? Because I usually do well over there. I was like, why do they hate this? Like, they don't like this at all. And then afterwards, a guy said, you know, you kept saying gyro, but gyro here is like a food stamp. So it sounded crazy, like I was basically talking about eating paper instead of like, and he's like, say kebab next time. And then I just changed it to kebab, and I was number one again. No, but there's things like that, words like, you know, that, you know, I see it happen when, you know, UK comics come to America. There'll be words that are like sort of speed bumps for the audience where it takes them out of it, and then all of a sudden the whole thing is ruined, and people don't laugh at something that's funny because it said one, like what this one comedian I saw was talking about Frosted Flakes, but they call them Frosties in the UK, so he kept saying Frosties, and I was like, I know what he means, and I'm guessing everyone else can put it together, but I was like, it's over. This joke is ruined because he used that word. And the other thing that's weird is I go to Norway about once a year, and I had this story about the Bible, and it's not like, it's just about going to church with my dad, and it's not anti-religion, it's not pro, it's just goofy. Like, so whatever anyone's opinion is about religion, is just silliness. So I'm like, oh, everyone likes this. And I went to Norway, and I did it the first night in this club, and I could feel like it really dipped down, and I thought like, this is gonna be the highlight. And then I was like, oh, these people are idiots. I'll go to the next town and do it. And the next town is the same thing. I was like, even, you know, a few hundred people, and I was like, here we go, I'm gonna knock them dead. And then I could feel like, and then afterwards, a comedian explained to me that their culture, they don't care at all about religion. Like, it's just not a part of their life, really. So he said that it was just like, as if I were to start talking about handball or something, they would just be like, why are you talking about this? So he said it was like, he's like, I recognize that it was funny. It's like, but you're just talking about something we don't, it's not even part of what we talk about here. So you just kind of learn. But I like to do it that way, because I used to try to figure out ahead of time, but as much as I did, it's really uncomfortable to be on stage in front of a few hundred people and have them not react at all. But to have it happen like once, and to have hundreds of people just staring at you is to me really funny. Like, so I really like it to happen that way rather than someone explaining to me. To have it happen one night where everyone's been like, I'm like, oh my god, I'm such a jackass. And like, I don't like it happen a lot, but I do have like some sort of masochistic thrill when it does happen. I'm sorry my answers are so long. We're closing in 5. No, is there any other questions? Oh, Mary, did you? Oh,
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Oh.
If you do about anything, has there been anything that you said no to?
Anything I said no to?
Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't. Yes, there is. I used to do stuff for Cinemax, and like just interstitial things, and Cinemax, or so I think someone said Skinemax. They have like a lot of nudie movies, not porn, but like softcore, I guess. I don't know. I don't watch. This woman knows. So talk to her. She's into it, I guess. But they wanted me to go to the set of a softcore movie and like shoot like interviews and act goofy, and I said no to that because I just thought that like people, like my heroes, I've never seen them do anything like that, so I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And I told my mom though how much money I turned down to not do it, and I said, you're on the hook for this. If I ever need it, I'm calling you, because I just turned down a lot of money. So that's one thing that comes to mind. But anything, I don't know. Anything that's not like nice, I guess.
Have you had that rotten fish in Iceland?
The rotten fish. And I've only been to the Iceland airport. This is pathetic of me, I know. No, but I've been in the Reykjavik airport twice, but I've never left the airport. I've had bad fish, if that's what you're asking, but not in Iceland. What did you have a question?
Yeah, in Canada, did you run into any particularly rabid hockey fans in Toronto or Montreal?
Yeah, I mean, I went to, the cool thing about, I went to 4 hockey games, and because as I mentioned, hockey's like really the only sport that I'm any good at, and even that's debatable, but it's the only sport I have really any enthusiasm for. And so I went to Calgary Flames game by myself. I went to Vancouver Canucks game by myself. I went to Montreal Canadiens home opener with a friend, and that was super fun. And I went to an Ottawa Senators game with another friend. That was fun. But with Joe Tate, actually. Not to bring Joe up, that bastard. Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I like to go, if you like hockey, it's a really good country. The weird thing is they don't like the national anthem. Like if you go to a sports event here, people are like, ah! But they're just like,
They sing along too.
they sing along, they'll sing along to both equally, Canadian and American, but they're just very polite and they don't like get all crazy. They're just like, alright, that was fun, let's play hockey. So, but yeah, I was one of the Rabbit fans.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that it? Oh, there's none.
Why didn't you take your dog to Canada?
Why didn't I take that's a good question. Why didn't I take my dog to Canada? The reason was because I only drove once, which I know, I wanted it to be like sort of like a road trip kind of book, but just with my schedule and stuff, the only time I drove was when I drove from Cleveland to Clinton, Ontario. And I would have liked to. I think she would have thrived in Canada. I mean, I guess. I hope book 2, the Yukon book, she'll be in that for. I think she would have liked it though, yeah. Alright, is that... Should we try to move the Molsons now?
Let's try to move these remaining Molsons. Molson Canadians available for just $3.
Molson Canadians.
And it's also super important, I think, to remind the people that the books themselves were printed in Canada.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, in fact,
That's amazing.
look at the publisher direct box from Penguin Random House. They say printed in Canada, so they're extra authentic.
Oh, wow. So these are really Canadian books. I insisted they be printed in Canada, and it turns out they were. So, no, that's cool. I just learned something about my own book. I guess that stands to reason. Well, thank you very much. If anyone would like a book or a Molson, they have them for sale here. I'm happy to sign any books, or if you would like to retain the full value of the book, I'm happy to not sign it. Thank you very much for coming. I can't because they said the police would come. I don't know any jokes either, really.
The short stories?
No, I can't do that. No. I will be at Hilarities tomorrow, though.
Yeah, but it's sold out.
Dave Attell?
Of course it is. No, Dave Attell is probably sold out. I'm in the small room because I'm street. Keep it real. I'm in the small room. I'm just doing a spot though. I'm not doing a show. It's not a full show.